So we're going to spend this week talking about factoring. This is the last and final operation in our operations of polynomials. We have covered adding polynomials, subtracting polynomials. We've also covered multiplying. So factoring, and we're going to start off with using a common factor or using area. Going back to what we learned last week. If you remember with multiplying polynomials, I went and I stressed back and forth from dimensions to area. So in this example, we have a rectangle here, and notice how we have a height of 2, and we have a length of x, and then this rectangle has a height of 2 and a length of 6. If you remember from last week, this total length of this segment here is x plus 6. And so if I go and I look at my dimensions are 2 by x plus 6. So what would be the area? So we learned last week that we can multiply the base times the height times the base. So 2 times x is 2x, and then a height of 2 and a length of 6 with 2 times 6 is 12, giving me an area of 2x plus 12. So in this example, if I have a total area of 5x plus 20, how am I going to find my dimensions? Well, notice how it gave me that I have a height of 5. So 5 times what is going to get me 5x? 5 times x. 5 times what is going to get me 20? 5 times 4. So my dimensions of this rectangle is 5 by x plus 4. Okay, so in the next rectangle, so again I have an area of 6x plus 48. So how am I going to figure out my height? Well, in this case, I know that I have this length is 8. So 8 times what is 48? 6 times 8 is 48. So that means I must have a height of 6. And so then 6 times x is 6x. So one question that I usually ask is it possible for this to be the x and this to be the 6? And the answer is no. Because if this one had a height of x, then this area would have to be 8x, and that's not going to be the case. So my dimensions are 6 by x plus 8. So what about in my next example? So if I have a total area of 10x plus 30, then if I've got a length here of x times what is 10x? So this has to be my 10. And 10 times what is 30? 10 times 3. So my dimensions are 10 by x plus 3. So now in numbers 5 through 10, we're going to be filling in the missing pieces. Notice how they've given me the area. So if I'm given the area, then I'm having to find the dimensions. So in this rectangle, I have a total area of 5x plus 35. So here's my 5x, here's my 35. Now they did tell me that I have a height of 5. So if I have a height of 5, then what has to go here? 5 times what is 5x? 5 times x. 5 times what is 35? 5 times 7. So my missing dimension is x plus 7. Okay, the next example, I have an area of 2x plus 12. So I know I have a height of 2. So 2 times what is 2x? 2 times x. 2 times what is 12? 2 times 6. So my missing dimension is x plus 6. So what about the last one? The last one, I have an area of 3x minus 21. And notice how they didn't give me any dimensions at all. So I've got to figure out what goes where. Well, if this one has an area of 3x, then what times what is 3x? Well, one of them has to be a 3 and one of them has to be an x. So what goes where? Does the 3 go here or does the 3 go here? Does the x go here or here? Well, let's look at the last area here. We have to have the same height, and notice how there's no variables in this last expression. Notice how there's no x's. So what that means is the x has to go here, and the 3 has to go here. So then 3 times x is 3x. 3 times what is negative 21? 3 times negative 7. So now my height is 3 and my length is x minus 7. So let's go ahead and figure out 8, 9, and 10. So I have 7x and minus 21. So again, my x can't go here because that one doesn't have an x, so that means my 7 has to go here. And my x has to go here. And then 7 times what's negative 21? 7 times negative 3. So my dimensions are 7 by x minus 3. Now in this one, I've got some negatives thrown in. So I have a negative 3x and a negative 15. Well, they've given me a height of negative 3. So if my height is negative 3, then this has to be the x, and it has to be a positive x. And negative 3 times what's negative 15? Negative 3 times positive 5. So my missing dimension is x plus 5. And number 10, so if I have an area of negative 5x plus 45, well, I've got to figure out what goes where. So in this one, you could say that you've got some options, but if I've got an area of negative 5x, one of them has to be a negative term, one of them has to be a positive. One of them's got to be a 5 and one of them's got to be an x. Well, the x is going to have to go up here because, like we said before, these two have the same height, and if this was an x, then that one would have to have an x, and it doesn't. So if my x goes here, x times what is negative 5x? Negative 5. Negative 5 times what is positive 45? How about negative 9? So my dimensions for the last one is going to be a negative 5 by x minus 9. So let's take a look at the vocabulary in numbers 11 through 14. Notice how they've thrown in this word factor. Well, we're going to be learning about that this week and what that means. But for right now, notice how these all look very similar to the ones we've done above. So in other words, you are given the area and you have to find the dimensions. Well, if it helps, draw a box. Set up your rectangle. You've got two parts here. This one is 4x and this is negative 16. So what has to be my dimensions? What has to be the case for 4 and x? Well, how about a 4 and an x? Well, if that's a 4, 4 times what is negative 16? How about negative 4? So my dimensions are 4 by x minus 16. So see what you can do on 11 through 14, and then watch the video to check your answers.